Hi guys, welcome back to Dream Analytica. I want to help elucidate the animus. I think that would be the most important psychological process of development for women to do in their lifetime. It is absolutely essential in Jungian psychology to elucidate, to understand, to integrate the animus in order to individuate in Jungian psychology. So what is the animus? The animus is the masculine aspect within a woman's psychology. And what does that mean? What that essentially means is that in every woman's psychology, they have a masculine component, which Carl Jung discovered and termed the animus. The animus is also another word in Latin for spirit, and this makes a lot of sense the more we get into it. In order to really understand the animus, you have to understand it in terms of its definition, which is the spirit. Now, there's so many ways we can attack this, but I think the first and most important aspect of understanding your animus as a woman is to understand it in terms of how you approach life. There is another word for animus, and he would represent the logos principle, meaning the rational or the thinking principle, which is also a description of the spirit that is imparted to you. And who imparts this spirit to you? The very first masculine figure a woman encounters is the father. So the father plays a very, very significant role in the development and the way the spirit is manifested in that woman's life. So the way a woman approaches life is in a large part dictated by the father. Now, no father is perfect. There are good fathers, but despite their best effort, have still not imparted a good spirit, to no fault of their own really. They might have had the best of intentions, but due to numerous factors, including one very important component in psychology, which is the unlived life of the parents, that the spirit was not imparted correctly. And therefore, it is up to the husband or the therapist to resolve that conflict, that inner conflict of the woman due to the deformed nature of her spirit that was imparted to her by the father. And equally for a father that has been absent or has not been a good father due to his personality or due to circumstances in life, that would impose a undeveloped masculine spirit within the woman. And we can get further into that. But there would be a lot of compensation in regards to that underdeveloped masculine spirit in a woman. Now, the one way that you would want to learn how to identify the animus is very simply to understand that this is a factual component of your psychology, and to also accept the fact that it is an autonomous factor within your psychology, meaning it functions autonomously. You really want to think about it as a completely different personality in your psychology. Equally for men, we have the feminine component, which is called the anima, which also means soul in Latin, as a completely separate personality from the ego, which is the I, what you call the I. And I broke it down in my application too. A really good way of understanding Jung's model of the psyche, which really helps you elucidate how your psychology really layered, is by layering your psychology into different layers, essentially. So you would go from the persona, the ego, the shadow, anima/animus, and then your personal unconscious, and then the self being the totality of your being, your psychology. And that's way deeper down the line, but you really want to understand your anima as a very deep layer of your psychology that acts autonomously. Once you understand that, it becomes a lot easier, especially for women whose natural tendency leans towards eros, whereas men consciously tend to lean more towards logos, the thinking versus the feeling. So what that ultimately means is that it's extremely difficult for women to dissect and discern, because their logos is in the unconscious, because their animus spirit is in the unconscious, which is needed for the dissection and the discernment. So it's very challenging, which is why I'm creating these videos to try to help elucidate him as sort of aid to help you understand how to do it with the help of an actual masculine figure who can help you dissect and discern those components within yourself, because it's extremely difficult, particularly if you're consciously leaning towards eros. So in order to properly understand him, like I mentioned, you must accept the fact that he is an autonomous entity. Okay, once that is done, that's the first step. Now you really want to understand what role he plays in your life. And Marie-Louise von Franz mentions she's a predecessor of Carl Jung, an associate of Carl Jung, one of the most powerful Jungian psychologists. She's no longer alive, unfortunately, but she likens the animus to have a range of extension from devil to Holy Ghost. Now, what does that mean? Women particularly know what I'm talking about. Women have a closer connection to the unconscious than men do. They have a closer connection to feeling and intuition than men do. So a lot of these concepts are actually not that difficult for women to understand. So when I say devil and Holy Ghost, women, they know what these definitions mean symbolically. It's very easy to understand. Women also know that there are instances where you feel like you are not yourself, like where you feel like you are being possessed, and that is in the negative aspect of the animus, is what Marie-Louise von Franz means when she says devil. And in his positive manifestation, or the positive manifestation of the animus, which imparts the spirit of life, the spirit of understanding, of wisdom, that would be the positive aspect of the animus. That is what she means by Holy Ghost. So it really depends on the woman and how far along she has developed her masculine side to be able to tell at what leaning is her animus. Is it more negative or is it more positive? The majority of women that I have helped, due to the current state of psychology and psychological teachings, it's leaning more towards the devil side, just because he has been so unconscious. And I think it's a responsibility for men like myself to help women understand their animus and turn him into the Holy Ghost, because that is just, it's so incredibly important. It will explain everything. And if men are watching this too, it's incredibly important to understand this aspect, because it will explain a lot of the behavior of women, especially nowadays. Women are not actually mad at, I mean, for the most part here, I'm generalizing, but in psychological terms, women are not actually mad at the men, real men. What they're actually mad at is their inner man. The inner man is causing them chaos, you see. It's not about the real men out there, although the real men, I would say a small proportion of men will contribute to that negative aspect of masculinity, but it's really not about real men in general. There are a lot of good men out there that just want what's best for their family, their relationships, for the world, that really care and want to do what's right. The inner chaos is caused by that inner masculine, that inner man within you. And you can see the devil aspect of this masculine aspect within a woman's psychology possess women. It's all over social media. You don't have to look far. You can even look at it within your own family. If they have very little understanding and awareness of their own behaviors in psychology, the woman literally behaves like a man. And you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their posture, you can see it in their tone of voice. Now, some women naturally have a deeper tone of voice, but these women that are possessed, it's almost like a forced deepening of the voice, but unintentionally, because possession is an unconscious state. They're not aware that they're being possessed by their masculine, their inner masculine. Now, it doesn't always have to be negative. The possession may, although I wouldn't like to say that, but the possession could be positive if the inner masculine is a positive force. But again, it is a possession, and that ultimately means that you're not in control. So you don't want to necessarily be possessed by anything, really. Although it is a natural occurrence amongst everyone. It just matters to what degree are you conscious of it. For men, we can easily be possessed by our anima, and those actually come up in mood swings, very terrible mood swings, very sensitive. He becomes extremely sensitive, he becomes extremely emotional, very touchy, like a princess, very picky, and you can see that all over the place too. And that, there you go, that explains some of the behaviors in men for women to understand that he's not behaving like himself, he's being possessed by his inner femininity. And once you understand these psychological concepts, which I'm trying to elucidate here, it's like a giant weight off your chest, because it now explains that, okay, maybe some of the behaviors are really not your fault. You were taken over by something else because you didn't know. And that's fine. But now that you do know, it is your responsibility to learn how to integrate that better so you don't get possessed as often. So before the video, because of ignorance, it wouldn't be your fault, but after the video, if you've learned something, then you must take accountability for that. You must take accountability that you have this inner masculine that can take over, and the reason he is probably really upset with you, you see how I'm treating him like an actual person, is probably because you've been ignoring him. You've been repressing him, or you've been denying yourself. Maybe it's out of survival. Maybe it's out of the fact that you've been so unsafe your whole life that the masculine principle had to take over. And so again, that's not your fault. But now that you are aware, there are better ways that you can integrate him so that he becomes a very positive and powerful force in your life. And that begins by elucidating him and then integrating him into your life. Now, the masculine principle, I know we're talking a lot about his negative side, his negative aspect, his negative polar, but he has just as much positive aspects as well. He's the entrepreneurial spirit in women. Usually in dreams, he will be represented by a young boy. Usually in mothers, it's their son, because they love their son so much. It's not actually about their son, it's about their inner masculine that is action oriented. Young boys love doing things, whatever, they just love doing things. So that could represent that woman's inner capacity to do things, to get things done, to take action instead of overthinking things. And usually in dreams, that's what the animus would appear as. And the other positive aspect is like a king. The animus can appear as a king in a woman's dream, which probably represents a deep sense of inner security, inner wisdom, an inner knowing, the ruler of the kingdom. He has the capacity to enforce a woman's assertiveness as well, because she is confident then in herself, in her masculinity. Instead of it becoming an overriding factor, it becomes almost like an armor for her, that she is not so concerned about the superficial aspects of life, but has a deep-seated throne of wisdom or kingdom of wisdom that she can fall back on. And that usually is represented by the king. I always like it, like the queen is the most powerful piece in the chessboard, right? So like if a woman dreams of the king, it seems like the king's in control, but actually the queen is in control. And that's how it should be. So the king actually stands behind the queen. Even in chess, the king is only allowed to make one move. So that's a really great symbolic imagery to fall back on if you're ever confused about what your inner masculine is like. Now, going back to his negative side, and again, the best way to elucidate for both men and women, but particularly for women, the best way to elucidate your animus is through your dreams. If you really want to paint a nice picture. So now you understand that this man operates as an autonomous figure. Okay, so we'll treat him like a separate personality within us, and we don't want him to take over. The next step is analyzing your dreams. What does he look like? Who does he appear as in your dreams? A lot of the times, the man will appear in the form of the husband, the boyfriend, the brother, the father. It really depends. So for each individual, it's unique. But that will help you understand what your inner man looks like. And then you can easily say, like, let's say it is the image of your father, and in the dream he's extremely authoritative, right? which is a very common dream actually, you can now say, okay, this Animus operates as an autonomous entity, and now he's taken the form of my father. So what does that mean? The inner logos principle in your psychology is authoritative. So you, in essence, are being extremely authoritative towards yourself. Imposed by the rules set forth upon you by your own father is embedded within you, and now you apply those rules to your life. And in a way, it's actually repressing your femininity. That's one interpretation of a dream in which the father is an authoritative figure for a woman. And that's the spirit that is passed down. So the father passes down the spirit of masculinity onto a woman on how to live life properly. And usually it's incomplete. So it's up to the husband or the therapist, like I said, to repair that damaged internal relationship with her masculinity. And that's normal, and that's okay to accept. And you have to learn, just as with anything in life, you have to learn how to do it. So this is part of the learning. It's accepting, it's realizing, it's understanding, and then integrating those aspects. So again, the power of dreams is just immense. And what it would also tell you is, if you're imposing too much authority on yourself, as the dream is indicating, in the image of your father, remember, it's not about your actual father. Your unconscious borrows the image of your father to represent those ideas, those convictions into you. So it's not really about your father is a completely whole human being. So your unconscious could only borrow certain aspects. So it's borrowing those particular aspects to represent authority as an idea, as a symbol in your psychology. So they're aspects about yourself. There are clairvoyants who can have dreams about objective detail, about reality, but that's a small percentage that we won't get into. I've not met many, and I've met a lot of people and spoken to them about their dreams. I have a lot of clients. So what do you do now? So now you know that, okay, I've been extremely authoritative with myself. What do I do now? That in itself is self-explanatory. You already actually know what to do at that point. You've been repressing your femininity in the name of authority, in the name of rules, in the name of suppression. So it's really that simple. Stop suppressing your femininity. Let your feelings come through. Yeah, stop being too authoritative with yourself. It's really that easy. So let's say like you're being so strict, like I shouldn't yell, or I shouldn't, the inner father in the dream is like scolding you for expressing your true feelings by being authoritative, like a lawyer or cop or something. So that imagery should tell you where in your life you are being like that, and that you should probably stop and let your femininity shine through. Let your feelings and your intuition shine through, because that is your true nature, and you're pushing that down. And then what happens if you have that dream and you don't do anything about it, then the father image takes over and you become possessed, and then you really are presented that way in conscious reality, and people will know it. Your husband will know, like, you're behaving extremely masculine right now, extremely authoritative. It will also make you sick, because if you repress any of your instincts, it could make you physically sick. It's a psychosomatic thing that whatever starts in the head can cause some physiological reaction, negative reaction. So you don't want to do that. So yeah, one thing in psychology, try not to repress anything. There are certain societal expectations, obviously, in which some behaviors are unacceptable, but for the most part, I think my rule is do anything you want, just don't hurt anyone. So try not to repress anything, just as long as you're not hurting anyone. That includes other people's feelings. So, like, yeah, I'm not the morality police here, but just try to do what is healthy psychologically and physiologically. And yeah, so that is really important to understand, is the way to elucidate the inner masculine is through dreams. And so that's what I want to get deeper into. And if you need help elucidating your animus, feel free to reach out, to leave a comment, to contact me through my website. I also developed an app where you can have a little more insight into the animus. It also covers a whole other range of topics, including how to interpret your dreams. There's over 200 symbols right now with the psychological interpretation and the archetypal meanings. There's a whole section on typology as well, in order to help you build better relationships, not just with yourself, but with other people, by understanding how you perceive the world, by how others perceive the world. It's a very powerful app, so you should go ahead and check that out if you're interested. But yeah, I will continue repeating this message to try and elucidate the animus. It's a very difficult topic, especially since I'm a man. I don't have a woman's psychology, so this is really based off of my observation and my analysis and my research and my understanding based on my clients, family, and friends that I have helped analyze. Yes, I have worked on my own mother's psychology and her animus problem. Her animus, by the way, I don't think it's a private matter, is Roger Federer. And so it started out actually as my stepfather, who was not a great man, very terrible man, a French guy. And so you could see just how powerful this is, but you could see what spirit was haunting her at the time, because she had just gone through a second divorce with my stepfather, and her dreams were mostly centered around him doing all these negative things. I can actually tell you a dream of hers. She dreamt she was in a room with him and the woman that he cheated on her with, and I interpreted that dream as your animus is playing tricks on you by cheating on you in your dreams. So psychologically, she's cheating on herself, playing all these negative fantasies about him. In a way, she's still latched onto that idea that she has not really fully let go yet. But once we analyze that dream, once she understood that that's just an image, it's not reality, the dream is describing a psychological instance that she herself, her masculine aspect, is cheating on her by playing all these mind games. That clicked with her. And ever since the interpretation, she has not had that dream. And now, as a matter of fact, it's transformed into Roger Federer, who she absolutely loves in real life. That's her Valentino. I think that's his name. Anyways, that's her ideal image of the male figure. And yeah, he was a good image in the dream, as well as he actually appeared with other men in the dream, particularly an older man. And that's a very important symbol for a woman. If you see an old man, he's usually the representation, the archetypal representation of the old wise man. So if you see the old wise man in your dream, you could safely assert that you possess those qualities. So if you see something in your dream, that's your psychology, remember. So you have those qualities. There is one other aspect that you need to understand about psychology that Jungian psychology has helped us elucidate. And this is so powerful. A lot of the times we feel like things just happen to us in terms of dreams, like we cannot change them. Like one of my clients told me he was afraid to have a dream because of the truths. Sometimes the truths can be a bit painful to hear, very painful to hear about ourselves. Like it tells us that we're not as great as we are, or that we are as great as we are, and we're just too scared to accept that. And they kind of just happen to us and we feel like, okay, now what? But that's not the full story. You can actually interact with these things in your psychology. So let's say you had that dream with the authoritative father. That came from your psychology, right? In the form of dream. All you really have to do, and it is as difficult and as simple as this, is when you're awake, revisit that dream, pretend you're in the same environment and he's in front of you again and doing his thing, except you can say, stop, and then speak to him. Listen to what he responds with. And it's a sort of imagination exercise where you're writing the dialogue. And it may seem a little silly at first because you're like, well, I'm just making this all up. Well, that's precisely it, because it's coming from your own psychology. So in a way, that man is actually talking through you in that imagination, that active imagination. And that's what active imagination is. It's you're having a dialogue with yourself, but now you have a good image of what your other characters look like. Let's say it's your father. So you can actually have a dialogue, and whatever comes out of your imagination, that actually is real. It is him talking to you, because it comes from yourself, just like it did in the dream. And you can change the narrative. So then you can say, okay, Father, I don't feel write about that. I think it's going to hurt somebody. Or I feel like I really want to express myself right now, and I don't believe that I should be repressing. And then he finally shuts up and then puts his head down and walks away. And then in conscious reality, you feel liberated because now you're not repressing anything anymore. And like if you feel like you need to shout at somebody because they actually did something wrong, instead of being submissive and like, I don't want to cause conflict or anything, but you actually let yourself express yourself. And this has worked for many women that I have had consultations with, including a friend of mine, where we were at a store and we were at the checkout line, and there was this one older lady being extremely rude to the cashier, even though she was trying her best. And my friend did not hold back. And my friend is an extremely shy person, very soft spoken. She's an ISFJ, so they're real peacekeepers. They really care about harmony in the group, but she did not hold back at this point. And that was the most healthiest thing that she could have done for herself and her psychology. She let that older woman have it and said, like, you're being extremely rude right now, she's not doing anything wrong, and so on and so forth. And you know how that goes. That is very healthy. She didn't hurt anyone, she spoke her mind, and she expressed her feelings. Naturally, the animus would be that voice in your head that would be saying, no, it's not right, you'll look crazy, or you're going to be you're going to cause commotion. He's that voice that of those general collective ideas of societal expectation that you should not behave this way or whatever. Yeah, but in that instance, he was the complete opposite, made her assertive, confident in her femininity, trying to protect the feelings of the cashier by letting that woman have it. That is extremely healthy. Yeah, there was no violence, and I will never forget the woman's face as well. She was just in complete shock. She really thought her behavior was justified, as most Karens do. They really feel like they're in the right. But when finally another woman tells her she's in the wrong, it's a big shocker. And yeah, it was just an amazing thing. And the amount of positive impact that has on her overall mood for the rest of the day, if not the year, is incalculable. It is so beneficial, and that is very essence of what an integrated positive animus looks like. It's so simple, but that's the spirit that is imparted to her. And all I did was help her interpret her dreams, really, and help her understand what her animus looks like. So, by the way, in her dream, I do appear as her animus sometimes. So, not in a bragging way, but that would be the positive. It's not about me, but I took the image of her positive masculine qualities. So that's really important. So you need to have healthy men in your life to be able to have a healthy masculine identity, psychologically speaking. Okay, I could go on forever. I feel like I'm speaking for too long now, so I'll end it here, and thank you so much for watching. I really hope I helped elucidate it, even if a little. And if you do have more questions and if you do need help, feel absolutely free to reach out. Don't be afraid, and don't let that inner masculine voice prevent you from expressing yourself, because that would be repression. That would be your negative animus talking. Express yourself. If you have questions, if you're curious, ask, reach out, don't be afraid. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for watching.